these hyperlocal Bibles are just snapshots, of diary pieces. And again, sometimes I'm just observing some. I don't know if it's good or it's bad. It's up to you. But I'm just wondering about what you may observe at the moment. Something that's different from today is that a lot of public bodies are now seeing themselves as news organisations. In my opinion, that's the way I observe, and there's a change of tone, I think is what I'm going to say. There's definitely been a change of tone. For example, say for something like Essex Police. Now these might seem to be just what you might see insignificant or petty or minor. But one thing is, for example, they're now change and do their press release in the first person. We are looking for somebody. We, and if you're going to change it, and there might be just a minor irritant to having to change we several times. And you might say, was that your biggest problem, Michael? But I'm just wondering if that is something that is conscious or unconscious, and whether that's what is that saying something. And I guess that's parcelled up, and this is not getting at Essex Police, and they're going to go into other organisations, but I wonder if that's parcelled up with more press releases that are sort of officer doing job. Now they might just say, because sometimes officer job, there is a tendency, in my opinion, that some of it looks a little bit like self-pity. Now they might say, we're just telling the public what we do. And giving the value for money to the public, taxpayer, etc. Because actually what they also do is they're very transparent with, say, officer disciplined, etc. So they might say, we can't win. And people say we'd cover these things behind closed doors. They're not opening up. We're just opening up. And the we is just maybe a change. But I'm just wondering if there's a sort of closure, if they're seeing themselves as a news organisation. And one thing that privately just irritates me, there's a lot that irritates me, is things like if they're looking for a missing person, or sometimes their statements go on Facebook first, and then there's this gap in telling us. Again, so a missing person, etc., etc. And they'll say, hold on, we've got a Facebook page, we've got loads more likes, or etc., etc., and we share it and it gets shared more, so it makes logistical sense to share it more than then, etc. But I'm just wondering, but there is a sense of tone that I just think sometimes it's turning on and off your relationship with the press, thinking you knew that, and not necessarily you can do that, turn it on and off like that, like a tap. I suspect there has been and this is a bit of a rambling piece, a change in tone. And I sort of tie it up with things like councils. Somebody refers like council on the south coast and said we're the news now. That they've almost spotted the weakness and the vulnerability in a business that, say, 250 newspapers have closed down, and they see themselves as the news. And I just wonder about, again, others are saying, talking on to councils now, that they feel that they are turning on and off their relationship with news organisations like a tap. We certainly find it that sometimes you get no response to a story, or 22 days later, 14 days later, 7 days later, what they call the tap. And it depends what the dynamics are. There may be some councils where you have, it may be down to a variety of reasons. Maybe every single one has to go through the chief executive, etc. But so that can be a frustration. I just think that's the dynamic. If I'm speaking now in April 2018, I think that's the dynamic. They suspect that they see themselves as news organisations, whether you call it propaganda machines or not. I'm not entirely sure whether some days we're friends, some days we're critical friends, enemies. You might say, but something about it has changed. And I'm not entirely sure over this 5-minute ramble whether I put my finger on it, but I'm going to keep you updated and say something has changed in the relationship between public bodies and the press. And I'm not entirely sure if that's a healthy thing or not.